chapter 1, and we're going to go to chapter 2 this morning. Lord willing, we'll take a couple of weeks with this chapter. I'm going to share with you the first 9 verses today. Therefore, we must pay much closer attention to what we have heard, lest we drift away from it. For since the message declared by angels proved to be reliable, and every transgression or disobedience received a just retribution, how shall we escape if we neglect such a great salvation? It was declared at first by the Lord, and it was attested to us by those who heard, while God also bore witness by signs and wonders and various miracles, and by the gifts of the Holy Spirit distributed according to his will. Now it was not to angels that God subjected the world to come, of which we are speaking. It has been testified somewhere, what is man that you are mindful of him, or the Son of Man that you care for him? You made him a little lower than the angels. You have crowned him with glory and honor, putting everything in subjection under his feet. Now, in putting everything in subjection to him, he left nothing outside his control. At present, we do not yet see everything in subjection to him, but we see him who for a little while was made lower than the angels, namely Jesus, crowned with glory and honor because of the suffering of death, so that by the grace of God he might taste death for everyone. One of the scholars that I've read after, Dr. Evans, for this series, I want to open with a quote from him. He wrote, "New Testament writers are never satisfied with theology alone. Belief must be followed by life." And that's true. And you see this especially true and evident in Paul's writings. His letters usually break down by beginning with a section on doctrine, followed by a section on how to apply that teaching to everyday living. The first 4 verses of this chapter is the first of several warnings and exhortations in Hebrews. And with these, there are severe consequences if we don't hear these warnings. Look at that phrase in verse 1. We must pay much closer attention. When I read those words, to me there's a sense of urgency, a real conviction, a real compelling to understand that nothing is more urgent, nothing is more important or real than what God has said to us about his Son and what he has said to us through his Son. We must rivet our hearts on these truths. Why? Lest we drift away. Remember, these are not lost people to whom the writer is addressing. These are Jews who turned from their tradition and they have embraced Jesus as their Messiah. But they are in danger. They are in danger of drifting away. That word drift in our passage has several allegorical implications. Drifting can be like evaporation. In a time of crisis, faith is not functional because it has evaporated away due to neglect. Or it could be like slipping, like a boat that is carelessly tied to the dock and it slips its mooring and it drifts away, leaving no evidence that it had even been there at all. Or leaking, like a faulty container that has microscopic cracks in it and the liquid that once was there has dissipated. Or in more modern terms, like a battery that loses its power due to neglect and disuse. If we neglect what we have in Jesus, we become spiritually sterile and impotent and endangered by impending judgment. So what is it that we have in Jesus that to which we are to rivet our hearts and minds? This chapter gives us 3 things, and we'll cover one of them this morning. And if you're taking notes in the bulletin, the first word is king. Jesus is our king. Today's globalists boast about a great reset which will usher in a new world order. They are such fools. They have swallowed the serpent's lie that was first told to Adam and Eve in the Garden of Eden, which essentially said, you can have paradise without God. There is a new world order coming, one that is ushered in by God and by God alone. And one place this is foretold is in Psalm 8, which is quoted in verses 6 through 8 in our passage. Now, in Psalm 8, David is praising God for the position and the blessings that he has bestowed upon us as a human race. Yet there's more here to it than that. In light of Jesus' coming, our writer has taken these blessings that are offered to humanity in general, and he has applied them to Jesus in particular. Jesus was made a little lower than the angels in that God became man, fully human in every way, while maintaining his divinity, living a sinless life, dying in our place, rising from the grave. He satisfied the demands of a just and holy God. And Jesus has redeemed. He has purchased. He has bought back everything that was lost in Eden. And if you'll look at verse 8, it says, putting everything in subjection under his feet. Now, sometimes when we use the word everything, sometimes we're not really thinking everything. We're thinking most things, or we're exaggerating a little. You know, maybe it's 90% of everything, and so we just say everything. The word here is very explicit. It is absolute, and it is inclusive. It means absolutely everything. Nothing is excluded. Nothing is beyond the reach of Jesus. But verse 8 also tells us we do not yet see everything in subjection to him. That is why heartache and woe still coexist with us. But it will not always be this way. One day he will come back, and he will take possession of what he has purchased, and all evil will be judged and destroyed. So why doesn't he come now? Why not today? Surely he sees how horrible everything is. You know, and I don't mean that in the absolute inclusive sense. But, you know, I don't know about you, but in my lifetime, it's never been harder or worse than what I've experienced. I can't say it's always been worse than everything. I haven't lived through all the history. But in my lifetime it is. Why not today? There are a lot of preachers that say the next event on the prophetic calendar is the coming of Jesus Christ. I would disagree with that, because there are two things that must happen first. Jesus himself said that the gospel must be preached to all nations. That hasn't happened yet. We are a lot closer to that than we were 5-10 years ago. And he also said that the love of many will grow cold, and there will be a great falling away spiritually, where people walk away from him. And while we are in the process of seeing these two things happen, I also look at it from another angle. You see, like you, I have unsafe family members, unsafe friends. And each day that Jesus delays his return is actually a gift. It's another opportunity for your family and for my family to be found by God and to receive salvation. Each day that Jesus delays his return is an act of God's gracious mercy. In what scholars call Jesus' Olivet Discourse, the sermon that he preached the night that he was betrayed with his disciples on the Mount of Olives, Jesus said this, "Blessed is that servant whom his Lord, when he comes, shall find so doing. Truly I say to you that he shall make him ruler over all his goods. And in the next chapter, 25, Jesus said, "You were faithful in a few things. I will make you ruler over many." That word ruler means one who is appointed, ordained, put in charge. This universe and everything in it will be subjected to and ruled by Jesus. And guess what? Because we are joint heirs with Jesus, we shall share in that reign as well. What does that entail? I have no idea. I have no idea. But if I were a betting man, I would bet you a hot fudge sundae, which I'm not allowed to eat. Tracy won't let me. But I bet you it'll be pretty cool. It'll be great. This universe is vast. What we saw first, the images from the Hubble telescope and now the Webb telescope, it's mind-blowing. And yet we have not even begun to plumb its wonders. When I have a window seat on an airplane, I enjoy looking out during takeoff. I know other people put their heads down and close their eyes. I love to look out the window because people, they instantly go from looking normal size to looking like toys to looking like insects. And about 10,000 feet, they disappear. Now hold that thought for just a moment. One scholar from whom I've been reading asked this question: are you something? I see in all this banality of what we call game shows and reality shows and much of social media, I look at that and you know what I see? I see a lot of hurting, broken people who are crying out, "Please look at me. I am somebody. I am important. And I want my life to matter somehow." The writer pens, "What is man that you are mindful of him? That you are mindful of him, that you care for him." God is mindful of us. He takes note of us. And whenever you read that word in Scripture, where God is mindful or God remembers, that word in the original language means more than, "Oh, well, you just kind of popped up in his memory." It means he is mindful and remembers to the point of acting in our behalf. He is mindful of us. Greater than the 10,000 foot level of an airplane's ascent, this universe spans thousands of light years across. And yet God sees us. He sees each one of us. And he picks us out not only of the massive humanity of over 8 billion people now, but he sees us from across the cosmos. Because God stands outside of his universe. God sees us. He knows where we are. He takes note of our condition. We're on his radar. He meets us at our point of need. What an amazing God we have. What an amazing love he has for us. Are you something? Yes, you are. Absolutely, unequivocally so. As Ethel Waters used to say before God took her to heaven, "Honey, God don't make no junk." He doesn't. Each one of us is something. Each one of us is somebody. Each one of us is created by Christ, and not only created by him, but given a particular place in his kingdom. As one scholar puts it, each of us has a holy design, a magnificent purpose, a kingdom goal. And the word in the original is telos, meaning our end, our purpose, our design. I don't know what the circumstances of your birth was. Sometimes we say it was an accident, it was not intended, it was a surprise. No. It's by design. God created you for an eternal purpose. We become, through Him, we become productive according to His purpose for our lives. We glorify Him. We bless other people, and we do so in such a way that no one else can take our place. Without you, if you decide that you want to just sit in a pew and not be part of the kingdom, or you just decide to walk away, I tell you, without you, His kingdom is not complete. Every one of us matters. So look beyond the obvious and focus upon the actual. No matter where you are, God sees you. And He is mindful of you. Don't focus on your circumstances. Don't focus on your situation. Now, I didn't say ignore them. Don't ignore them. Don't live in denial of them. But don't focus on them. Focus on who God is. And focus on who you are in Him. A precious, loved, chosen daughter or son. Focus on that. Focus on who you are in Him. And good Lord willing, we'll finish this chapter next week.